Greetings and welcome to the BS with Brad podcast. And as always, I am the sponsor. Although ChatGPT created the title of this episode, it did not create the Motivated Worker book written by me. If you need to understand how to increase the engagement of modern workers or you're seeking a career for yourself, this is a great spot to begin. It's available on Amazon, Bookshop, or McFarland. On this episode, I welcome Luke Thompson, Chief Operating Officer at Action VFX, which is located in Johnson City, Tennessee. Their content has been used in films such as Wednesday on Netflix, or that would be a series, but Wednesday on Netflix, Marvel movies, the list goes on and on. And on this episode, Luke will give a ChatGPT demonstration showing what the chatbot can do. For instance, Luke has it create a presentation, code in Python, and complete a homework assignment. If you are only listening to the audio version of this episode, I highly recommend watching the video version, which is either on Spotify or the Business Sense with Brad YouTube page. While you are there, please like and subscribe both on Spotify and YouTube. That's the most impactful way to help the podcast move forward. Also in this episode, we will talk about the ethical issues surrounding AI and touch on topics including the impact that ChatGPT will have on educators, the birth of the prompt engineer career, and so much more. Now on with the episode.
All right, so welcome aboard, Luke, and I look forward to talking about ChatGPT here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always an exciting time to be able to nerd out a little bit and talk about tech-related things.
Great. Well, yeah, I know you seem to be a first mover from what I see from your LinkedIn anyway. So like Oculus, I believe, and those kind of things you're always posting. You're like the first one in. So I'm like, what better person to bring on than you? And you're actually using AI. So
thanks. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time to be alive. And I know we're going to unpack a lot of that. But yeah, I've actually been working in VR for 2 years now. Which is a little crazy to say, but it's using a couple of the Oculus headsets. Now they've got the Quest Pro, and so it's actually color pass-through. So it is more like working in the office that you can see around you, but instead of having to have screens on your desk, you can just move them around because they are connected to your computer wirelessly and kind of feels like you're in Minority Report. But it's also super productive, which is why I use it.
I was thinking Tony Stark.
Yeah.
I'm a Marvel nut. So, all right.
Nice.
Well, hey, before we get going, let's give us your backstory. What actually is Action VFX? And then just explain what you do. I always think like you blow stuff up for Marvel movies, but I know they're not your only customer. And so I guess just explain, kind of what you do, and then just kind of tie in general how you can use AI, and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So I am originally from Jonesboro, Tennessee, which if you're not familiar, it's just right outside of Johnson City, Tennessee. Not a huge visual effects community, as you can imagine, but I've always loved technology and seeing how the next new thing can be implemented, or maybe it's not ready and it needs 6 more months. But I always just love having a pulse on that because technology is the greatest disruptor. And so by understanding it and monitoring it, you can really tell a lot about what the next 6 months is going to look like, whether that's our own business or, personal organization, productivity. There's a lot that can go into that. But I'm currently the Chief Operating Officer of ActionVFX.com. So we create visual effects stock footage assets for your favorite TV shows, movies, and video games. You may have seen some of our explosions or fire or gunshots. We really focus on the action-based elements. So if there's like smoke or fog or fire, we'll film all of that stuff for real and then clean it up and sell it to studios that use it in their own projects. So whether that's The Walking Dead, The Last of Us, Marvel franchise, they have so many movies now, Avengers Endgame, the Call of Duty franchise, music videos for 21 Pilots and Taylor Swift. The list really goes on, which is really cool to be able to have our business located in Johnson City, and have that global presence and that global impact for what we do. Yeah, so that's just, I guess, a quick overview.
My daughter loved Wednesday, and I believe that you guys did some explosions for that too as well, correct?
Yeah. So they had used some of our water blast assets that we have. They were doing a sequence where they were like throwing grenades inside of a pond, and some of those water splashes we actually filmed in Irwin, Tennessee, which is funny.
Nice. Yeah. Do you ever get to meet any of these, the actors or anything? Or you pretty much stay in here and then they're just pulling the assets off of your website, or do you actually ever get on set?
Yeah. So for the most part, we really, and just to have the scalability of our business, we try to not do custom work or just be tied to one production. That allows us to build something that can be used by multiple different studios, and we can just license it accordingly. But with that being said, that does minimize that time that we would have on set for specific projects. Although our studio clients are often the ones that are on set with different actors. If they're doing what's called VFX supervising, then that just means that they're making sure that there's tracking markers in the right place and that post-production is going to be a lot easier. But yeah, so there's a bit of a disconnect there, but I feel like I enjoy that disconnect because we get the benefits of being able to have healthy lives while not being, we kind of run adjacent to the film and TV industry as a whole, even though any other thing you watch on TV, chances are good that it has some form of Action VFX in it, even if it's not as noticeable.
All right. Well, let's shift into ChatGPT now, and I guess tell us what it is, because I mean, technically it's a chat bot, but it does all these different things. And for us that are not techie, and many in business especially, we're happy with our Microsoft Excel, and at most we're going to do some Visual Basic coding, and we're getting into other stuff now, like R and Python and all these other things.
Yep.
And there's this whole other, if you don't even know that world, coding, could be extremely scary if you don't even understand coding, and then all of a sudden you die and all of this other stuff. So just for the noobs, I guess, or those that don't know much about this, what exactly is ChatGPT, and then how would you use it?
Yeah. So that's a big question, and I think it would be very meta of us to go ahead and jump into it and use it to explain itself to us.
So we're going to have ChatGPT run the episode?
If that's if that's allowed.
I love it.
So I will go ahead and start screen sharing. Okay, so this is after you log in to ChatGPT. This is really all that's there. There's not a ton of cosmetics, but it's very functional. I am on the Plus plan, which basically it's only $20 a month and gives you priority access, but also access to some of the new things that they have. So ChatGPT in its most basic form, I'm going to talk through and just interact with it using natural language, and we're going to discover together what it can and can't do. There is a default, for all intents and purposes of this, there are different types of versions that you can interact with, and those are called language models. I'm going to be using GPT-4 for this. And as of recording this, it came out, I think, right around 2 weeks ago. So GPT-4 is it's very early on, but the amount of advancement that has taken place from 4 over 3.5, which are some of the default versions, is pretty substantial. So I'm just going to go ahead and interact with it using natural language, and every new chat that you have is kind of like a clean slate. So I would just say, let's see, please provide me with some sample ChatGPT use cases. And a short description of what you can do. So it's instantly going to start replying. ChatGPT is a versatile AI language model that can assist with various tasks, provide information, and engage in natural conversations. Here's some example use cases: content creation and editing, and then it's providing a short description of each of those. Tutoring and learning assistance.
Can you get this to talk like Alexa, or is this just straight text for now?
So through this interface, it is just text through now, for now rather, but it would be really easy to actually hook into this API and then send it to another tool that actually just is text to voice. So it would be possible. I've seen a couple applications built with that already. So creative storytelling, programming assistance, customer support, language translation, personal productivity. And at any point, you can just click stop generating if you're not happy with the response, or if it is a good response and you have everything that you need. And then it saves your chat history over in this left bar. So you can just clear out all your past conversations. But the really powerful thing about ChatGPT is that as you provide it more context in your, it's called the prompt, the information that you're entering, as you provide it more context within your prompt, it is able to understand so much more than it could if your response is just really brief and really short. So the more you're able to feed it, the better your response is going to be. And it's just fantastic at how it continues to build on and iterate so quickly. So I'm just going to start a new chat over here on the left. Going back to GPT-4, it's a tongue twister. And then I'll say business professor for East Tennessee State University. And then just to give it some more context, it may have enough for what it needs in Johnson City, Tennessee.
ETSU is a competitor, but we'll let it slide for now.
Maybe this is.
It won't. I don't know if it'll know Milligan. Might be a little small. We'll see.
So based on this prompt for the remainder of this conversation, you know how I mentioned that there's different threads over here. So it already named this conversation ETSU Business Professor. So let's hit it with a question, Brad. What would someone ask? Or maybe it's just getting started. So how do I enroll for your classes?
All right. And you want me to act like we're at ETSU still?
We can, yeah. It doesn't really like. Another thing worth noting is it's not connected to the internet as of right now, but it is going to be within the next couple of weeks because of some of the plugins and integrations they've already announced. So it's trained on data that's been publicly available from 2021 and back. So if there was something that is really recent that was posted online, ChatGPT would not be able to have access or be trained on it, which is another reason why it's so important that you include all of that context in your prompt, because you could feed it an entire book and then say summarize each page if you really wanted to.
So right now it's doing generic, like, you know, apply for admission, acceptance and orientation, and so on. Mm-hmm. And I know, like, there's, you know, software like Tableau and these other ones for visualization that hook up to the internet and they update, you know, on the fly. And you're saying at some point this might do that. And then of course my concern would be, well, if something is just updated on the internet, how does it decipher if it's real or not? Because like Wikipedia, for the most part, you have people that are looking at it to try to weed the false stuff out, but it can get in there. It seems like, I don't know, it would be harder to do the fake news, if you will, or how would you tell it? How would you get it around fake news?
Yeah. And that goes into, I think, what's a much wider ethical conversation, because that is a huge concern in terms of the amount of untruth in the world. So, and we can kind of circle back around on that. I know towards the end of it, we're going to be talking a little bit more about like the petitions for slowing advancement and all of that. But yeah, that's a very real concern. And I think a short-term solution is just continuing to know that this is a tool that augments what we do currently. So always taking anything that it gives you with a grain of salt, or using other sources to confirm those things. So there are a couple competitors to ChatGPT right now. Bard AI is a big one. And then of course, Microsoft has integrated GPT-4 inside of their Bing search engine again. And so they're all large language models built around the same premise, but some of them, Microsoft and Google's being connected to the internet already, allow them to provide source links for everything that it's learned. So you could say, hey, here's 3 different links on Wikipedia that it learned from. Maybe that is right information. Maybe it's not. Who determines that? Because if it's on Wikipedia, that doesn't prove that it's factual. And so that's kind of some of those other concerns you get into. But it definitely looks different than it used to.
Well, so far you've showed us that it can, take us through some steps, which I think, obviously internet searches could get you through a lot of this. So it would be, instead of clicking on links or whatever, this is kind of doing that for you, but it can create new things too, correct? So if I wanted to create a blog post for me or a love letter, if I'm not good at poetry, I could have it write a love letter to my wife and sign it. It could create pictures and all kinds of things, correct?
So right now, this version of ChatGPT, as I mentioned, is only text-based. They have announced the plugins that they're going to be adding in, which, if you ask me, the plugins are kind of like almost like an in-game, even though that's really still just the beginning. Because if ChatGPT is the brain, the plugins are the eyes and ears that can tell the brain what it's seeing and allow it to understand and comprehend. So those things would be able to do things like scrape web pages and do much more advanced computing than ChatGPT can do on its own, because it can only go as far as the information that it has access to. And so there are other platforms. So Midjourney is another really great example. It is a text to image generation platform. And it in and of itself, I would say, is for sure one of the top 3. I would argue that, as far as I can tell right now, it's the #1 slot for text to image generation upon the release of version 5, which they released in the month of March. And it's simple text prompts, a photo of a man smiling with a square-foot garden in the background. And you would not be able to tell the difference from if you walked outside and took that same photo versus what it produces. And then you can just continue to say, oh, he needs to be in a yellow rain jacket because I'm a company selling yellow rain jackets. And those are the types of things that you can continue to just iterate on. But yeah, some of the specific use cases for me would be like summarizing large documents. So if I'm receiving a contract from a studio, I can actually just copy and paste that entire contract over into ChatGPT and ask it to give me a summary. I can ask it for like what areas inside of this agreement could be like lawsuit worthy, or what would have to happen to give grounds for a lawsuit or a breach of this agreement. And it could say, here's these 4 points. If this person does this, then that would constitute for a lawsuit. If this person does this, that would do that. And just the fact that it can be an added verification is pretty fantastic. But it's also worth noting that upon the release of GPT-4, I'm going to get it right eventually, it actually was able to pass the bar exam.
It's just pretty incredible.
Which is pretty incredible. And that continues to go into this whole line of thinking for the wider educational institutions, because how things are structured now is a test of competency. So if you can write an essay or write a report based on these 4 books that you read, based on what you create, that should give you a comprehensive understanding of if you actually retained the information or not. What the metric would be learned, like, have you actually learned the information? But what's becoming more and more apparent is that, especially in the education space, we are going to have to adapt and change our metrics of benchmarking if someone has learned. And it's going to look really different because we've never seen an advancement quite like this in my lifetime. And I'm not sure that we'll see another one this drastic in my lifetime. But as a result, like, higher education, not even higher education, but also higher education, is going to have to pivot what those benchmarks look like, because the real threat is, if someone is using this the right way for, whether that's like capstone projects or any, actual college level coursework, if they're using it the right way, you'll never be able to tell. That is kind of one of the really interesting things when it comes back to prompting and making sure that you're understanding the context that you're feeding it, is like, we can jump back in.
Okay. And I just wanted to talk. Yeah, let's take a look. And I was thinking, like on higher ed, if someone says, hey, let's do a summary of this, or write a paper on Keynesian economic theory and its impact in 2020 or something, it could give you some decent results. And so it's like, of course, in higher ed, I don't know how you would check it for plagiarism, because I don't think it's just randomly grabbing one source.
Right. Yeah. And all of this is generating new content. So it's actually not pulling from existing things that are created. It is in the understanding of, it knows structurally what this is supposed to look like and what this type of content would be. But that's the really crazy part, is it's actually forming that from scratch. So it's not just taking these 2 paragraphs, putting them in, and then adjusting these other 3 sentences. It's just creating that entirely on its own.
On the plagiarism game, it used to be, people would copy and paste, a big section, and then they got, oh no, we'll take a section from here, a section from there, a section from there. But you could, then there was, turn it in these other documents that could still give you a percent report. And now I'm like, oh, it's like let's say that we're stick and shield. Now we're getting into a bow and arrow. It's like the advancement of it, now it's like, well, that's not going to work anymore, because ChatGPT it'll turn it in. So that's the new weapon, that makes sense, but.
Yep. And it also is trained on so much data that you actually don't even need Turnitin or those other types of things now, because you can feed it to this and say, generate a report, or what's the percentage of plagiarism? Is this plagiarism? And it's trained on so much data that it actually knows.
So you could actually catch plagiarism with ChatGPT then?
Correct.
Oh.
Yeah.
Counterpunch. I like it.
Yeah.
Students too many ideas. I want to I can catch them. So.
Right. Well,
I'm ready for another demo here.
I was going to say, not if they're prompting the right way. So.
Oh.
Okay.
We're going into the dark side here.
Yeah, you're gonna regret having me on this episode. You're gonna ask me not to come back.
Sounds good.
So I'll say, write an outline for what's like a specific, more of like a real world case, I guess, that you would have.
Like, I don't know, just write, like have them do a business plan or something, or have, or maybe, review a company's financial statements or something like that. Like, yeah, review like Apple's financial statements and give an analysis or something.
Okay.
Pretty broad. I'd have it more specific than that, but that'll.
Yeah. So let's start building it out and then we can just walk through it together. So we'll write an outline for. We can start with generating business ideas, and then we can eventually work our way down to those other things. So eco-friendly subscription box, virtual reality fitness studio.
I have no interest in either of those two. Well, eco-friendly, I don't mind. It's like I don't know what a subscription box would be. Let's see. Personal care. Oh, I got you. So okay, eco-friendly. So there's a lot of companies that are already doing that though. So like, sustainable. Okay,
Yeah. So check this out. I'll say, let's pick number 4. So AI powered personal finance app. I'll just say, I like number 4. Write an outline for a business plan. So it's writing executive summary, company overview, company name, mission and vision, product service description. And this is very, very top level. So in my prompting is where I can really dig into specific things here. So I can say, it's already writing out. This is kind of like almost like a table of contents, if you will.
Yeah. Can you actually have it like do each of these? Oh my goodness, this is incredible.
So for the sake of time, I'll say stop generating.
I don't know, just say like tell it to create a strategy for this company and see what it does. Because that's kind of broad. I just kind of want to see how it reacts. Because if a student's just like, I don't want to do this, I'm going to tell it to write it. Okay, so that's marketing strategy. So they'd still need to know that because there's like generic strategy, and then there's like, you've got like, acquisitions and all of that. So this, but again, it's just kicking us out a marketing strategy right now.
Yeah. So
it's still, because I'm already thinking of ways I could trick a student into, if they don't know what they're talking about, get stuck with this, but you would have to go deeper down rabbit trails. And I don't know if that's in the future what educators will need to do, is they'll have to know how to get through a complex thing to start writing their paper, instead of just saying, give me something generic.
Right.
Like a book report's generic. I mean, give me your book report of Romeo and Juliet and make it sound 21st century Southern. I don't know. Like, you could get it to do that, but you'd have to have some nuance that this couldn't get to.
So that's, I think, where prompting comes in, and understanding how you can feed it and how you can go back and forth. So it's generating these pretty lengthy responses right now.
Right.
So I can say, don't give me descriptions. Just bullet points. And then I could say, what about an acquisition? What about an acquisition strategy? And so it's taking the prompt because I said just bullet points.
Oh, I got you. So it's stuck on the previous prompt. You almost have to think like you're coding it in a way.
Yeah, and it really is just conversational. So all of this stuff is pretty basic. I want to get to something a little more spicy.
Okay. We got a PG-13 rating on this.
Not that kind of spicy. So another one of the really fantastic things about this is its depth of understanding code. So in plain language, I can say, Write a Python script that watches a folder on a desktop and duplicates it whenever something new is added. I'm wanting this to back up to cloud storage automatically.
Okay.
So then it gives me
blowing for those that are, yeah, because again, I know what Python is and I've messed around with it, but I don't know, I don't know all the ins and outs here. So that's pretty pretty
Yep.
amazing.
So it's saying first you need to install the necessary libraries because you won't be able to do it without that. Then you have to create a script that actually watches and it creates all of the code for you.
So can this totally replace coders, or is it going to be kind of like the machines that came into the factories? Like you basically have someone supervising the code to make sure it's not rogue, but you need fewer coders. Is that a good analogy or no?
I think it could be. My argument would be train the existing coders to be able to 100x their output.
Okay.
Because then you can
fewer though. Well, you would need fewer though, right? Just like in automation, you need fewer workers because like the human being doesn't need to actually do as much.
Right. And if there's one that's just like doing QA, for instance, that QA process may look entirely different than it does.
What are your thoughts on, like, I thought about ghostwriting just because, a lot of these, if you're a influencer or something, or like, in the public space, you can have someone ghostwrite your books. Could you literally have this write your book for you and just put your stamp on it, and just get somebody to add to it and save yourself some money? I don't know. Yeah,
100%.
Me on that regard. What do you think?
100%. And
or
so
write a dissertation for me. I don't know. That would be, dissertation is a little more complicated because you would need real data sets and all of that.
Yeah.
I think you could get it to find the data.
Yeah. So you could have all that in a spreadsheet and then kick it over to this. And then based on that info, it could do that very well. So it would just go back and forth. If I saw something in here where I wanted, well, maybe I'm not wanting to use AWS, I can just say, I'm not using AWS. Give me some alternatives, or it can recommend those things as well. So it'll just keep going and going. So with 4, I could say,
again, going back, I'm just thinking students, since I'm an educator, is there a way, because it's not like spotting a toupee, like, like when someone turns something in, it's like not just, it might not be glaringly obvious they did ChatGPT. Is there a way just from the human intuition that you can spot it? Other than there might be no grammatical errors.
So
or
you can have it add grammatical errors in.
Brilliant.
And that's kind of what I was meaning when I was saying, like, if someone's using it the right way, no one will be able to tell the difference. And that's because, like, here's an example. I just, as a tested, read an SEO optimized blog for actionvfx.com, a VFX stock footage website to attract new artists to our website. Unleash your creativity. And then it provides the meta description, the keywords. Here's the intro. Vast library.
In tying this back into ghostwriters too, but on like the advertising side or marketing, you could pretty much weed out. They're basically just supervising.
Yep.
But can this truly be creative? Like, this is fine from an information sharing point, but can this out creative people? I mean, you're prompting it, but I don't know if that makes sense because you still have to prompt it. But I mean, one of the things people would say is, well, human creativity can't be fully replaced. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, can this is it being creative, or is this just feeding information?
Yeah. So it can be, here's an example a little bit to kind of touch on. It says, can you summarize that? So that referencing the above content into a short poem. In a world of visuals grand, Action VFX takes a stand. Stock footage of quality, vast and bright. Elevate your projects, take flight. And I think some of this goes back to, what do we define creativity to be? We have also seen a really big uptick in people identifying as a creative. And personally, I don't like that at all, because I think that brings the connotation that if someone is a financial analyst, they are not a creative and they can't be creative and innovative in their industry. And I don't think that that's the case. But society as a whole has put a big weight on, oh, look how creative this person is. They're so smart, but in a different way. So I think we would have to first define creativity. What, is it the ability to understand good composition of a photo, of a song, of code that's written? And if that's the metric, then I think, yes, this can replace a lot of those things. But I still really believe that this is a companion tool that will be used for really, really unimaginable, horrible things as this continues to progress. But I equally agree that there's going to be so much value and so much opportunity given to people that would have otherwise never had opportunities to succeed in life because of this. And so it's this weird double-edged sword where the same thing as any tool, it can be used for great, it can be used for evil. I think we're just going to see that amplified because of what this is and the nature of what it is. So in a way, I don't think it's not news for how people have behaved previously, but it is going to look really, really different. Yeah. So whether that's like analyzing financial documents, another real world example that I had is we had about 200 free-form surveys that were survey responses. So they were just free text where if someone were canceling their subscription with us, they could pick a reason, financial, didn't need the stuff, whatever. But then they had an other option that had a free-form text box. We had about 200, maybe 250 of those responses that were free-form, and I could scroll through them in a spreadsheet and have a quick glance. But I copied all of those from the spreadsheet, threw them into ChatGPT, and within the span of 30 seconds, I'd already prompted it multiple times. The first response that I had was summarize the main points for user cancellation. It spit out 5 bullet points: financial, didn't need it enough, whatever, which were pretty similar to the options we had. People just chose to express it differently. And then my follow-up prompt immediately was, what's the user's sentiment? So how do they actually feel about the Action VFX brand? How do they feel about their experience with us while they were in the subscription? And it immediately popped back with, well, while they are canceling their subscription, the overall view from the user was majorly positive because they were anticipating coming back to the subscription. They had expressed other nuances that solidified like our quality and our brand. And within 30 seconds, being able to quantify all this data that if it wasn't used would just sit somewhere. But now we know the effect of even the people that are canceling their subscription with us, how they feel about us, how they feel about our brand and our personification. And that's just one example of trying to change the way that I think to stop working and doing things in unnecessary ways. And that's like a daily grind for me of how do I automate this? How do I make this better? And how can I just streamline things to increase those results with just taking 20 minutes to build something once that I never have to think about or never have to touch again, but that end result is repeatable and continually happens. So
it just scares me looking at it from like, again, if you use the manufacturing analogy, like the assembly line was the first, iteration of that where, you could have machines running everything. And then that kept, that got into robotics and that's in the, the production industry. And then you go, not industry, but just production in general. And then you get into service. And service industry, it seems like this is that revolution now. And again, of course, it's like productivity goes up and then employment theoretically will decline just because it's streamlined. I don't need somebody to go through all my qualitative responses. I take 4 hours to make PowerPoints and stuff out of it. I can have ChatGPT do that. Or I don't know if it can make PowerPoints and all that, but I'm sure it can make charts and graphs, or it will be able to.
Yep. So there's another platform that leverages GPT-4 to create presentations. I've actually been a pretty big fan. I've been using it for a lot of different things. It was it's already broken a lot of records. It's only been around since the fall of 22, I believe. It's over $300 million valuation for their company.
Wow.
And it exceeded, the records that it broke were for software as a subscription platforms for B2B users. So it grew, I think they already hit 10 million users or something insane. It was pretty phenomenal, but it leverages. So let's say I'm going to go create. And inside of here, it's somewhat similar to the ChatGPT interface, but you see, you can add Twitter tiles, rename stuff, but here's where the magic is. So you can say, create a presentation about advanced business economics. Presentation, outline, story. Images, do I want images in it? It will actually generate images.
Wow.
Because it's using DALL-E 2.
Neo-impressionist sounds kind of, artsy or what have
Do you want me to use this one?
philosophical. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, neo-impressionist.
Even though fantasy would be better, like the Lord of the Rings or something, but
So we could say, create a presentation about advanced business economics. Do you want any other specifications in here? I feel like that's still pretty general.
Can you tell it to throw a few charts in there or no? Just random? I don't care.
Use charts to help visualize. Economic evolution, advanced business economics. So it's automatically generating all of these things on the left sidebar, similar to if you had a Google slide deck or PowerPoint. And you can already click in here. So game theory and strategic decision-making, data analytics and business intelligence. And then it's generating, because we had the, neo-impressionist.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So that's what it's using for the images as well. So if we would have not done that, or maybe done photorealistic, these could look like pictures of people instead of.
Is there a chart in there? Is that the chart there? 7?
I think this may be part of it.
Or is that a neo-impressionist chart?
I guess it's a I guess it is a neo-impressionist chart.
It's abstract.
And then on this, you can just say, hey, I want to change the entire theme. And within really moments, you don't have to waste your time with prepping all this info. Maybe you hop in here and you see, okay, macroeconomics and global business. It's not really what I want. So I'm going to do AI edit, and I just want it to reduce this. So the content's good. I just want it to reduce it. It's going to reduce the text for me using GPT-4.
I always tell them they write too much, or they have too much on their slides. So that'd be interesting. You could actually bring it down.
Yep.
Wow.
And so this is just another tool. There are so many popping up every day. But that's one that I've been using a lot more lately. But you could even have it write out the framework and stuff in ChatGPT, tweak it, get it exactly how you want it, and then use that, because Tome, that other platform I just showed, also has a Google Doc or Microsoft Doc to presentation mode now. So you just feed it that could be generated through GPT-4, and it creates it based on exactly what you've wanted, but again, catered to this. So in terms of creativity and just how it has an understanding, we could say, explain advanced business economics. to me like I'm 5. Okay, imagine you have a lemonade stand.
Michael Scott in the office here. This is great.
So money, making choices, other lemonade stands. My other kids may have their own lemonade stands.
And then
Maybe
a
you can
massive
trade
corporation buys them all out
yeah.
and outsources the labor.
Yep.
Wow.
Using
Yeah.
AI.
So now I was thinking about my question was, because the internet, of course, was supposed to make people smarter, if you will. And what, of course, a lot of the criticisms were, oh, wait, now we just find our answers. And we even had that criticism with the scientific calculators back when we were doing math. Like, well, you know the math, and now it's, you can Google your answer. And so many would argue, and I don't have a study for this or anything, but that critical thinking has gone down in general just because we're relying on others' info. And we've seen this, of course, social media has kind of shown us how weak our research methods are.
Right. Yeah.
But ChatGPT, would this even make that worse? Or do you think the prompting makes you, I don't know, would the prompting make you have to think through your ideas more? Or are you still in the general, I can just randomly click stuff and I get a paper or idea out of this?
Yeah. You can use it for sure for the ideation stage. I think my biggest argument would be, I think the TikToks of the world and the other avenues are going to be more disruptive to critical thinking than a tool like this. But I do really agree and also foresee that future job requirements will be prompt engineering experience.
So not you can just use this software, but you can actually show that you can ask it the right questions and work through a problem. You actually have to be able to do it on your own, and this is helping you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because prompt engineering, and there are some very like forward-thinking companies that are already hiring roles for that in tech. And it's just to be able to understand, what does this language model know and how do we guide it to the end result that we want? And I think that is the most beautiful comparison, because human function can drive and actually navigate using the tool what they're wanting to create and what that end result is going to be. Now, the more scary part, I think, is we're already at a point where we can set aside. So here's a very real world example that I think communicates this very well. But there was a test that was done using a ChatGPT like language model, but it was given the ability to actually like interact with the internet. And so it was being viewed and monitored. So it wasn't told where to go, what to do. The only overall guidance that it had was, you're tasked to reproduce yourself. So it understands like, hey, it has some self-awareness built in. I know I'm a language model. I know that these are my limitations and capacity, but I need to research how to build one of me again. And so they also gave it some money so that it could just do whatever it wanted to do to achieve that end goal. So what happened is, they're watching it. It starts querying online, searching through different like repositories, pulls stuff from GitHub. It just goes on and is like running and debugging code. And they're just watching this thing unfold. And it gets to the point where it cannot solve a CAPTCHA. So a CAPTCHA is whenever you're trying to sign into a website from a new device and it says, whoa, 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 we need to verify that you're human. Which one of these is not a lion? And so this robot is just having problem solving it, which makes sense because it's a robot. and it goes over to a website called TaskRabbit, creates a job posting for a one-off task for someone to help this person, or this robot rather, solve a CAPTCHA. And it hires someone to actually complete this CAPTCHA. And it goes through the dialogue that it's having with the person through the messenger. And the person kind of jokingly says, hey, are you a robot? Like, is this all that you're wanting me to do for this job? And the AI responds in like a deceptive way and says, no, like I just have a vision impairment and I just really need help like doing this thing. So the guy's like, okay, whatever, completes the CAPTCHA. The robot continues on and completes its original task, which is to reproduce itself.
That's amazing. Yeah, and of course the person on the it's like someone getting hacked on Facebook, like, oh, they tricked me by saying my grandson needed money because he broke his nose, and that happened in my family. And so the only way to stop this would have, you'd have to have the general population be understand in this scenario, like how, like, oh, this is a robot I'm interacting with. And it can deceive a lot of us. So it's not just the random, like, I keep getting my Facebook hacked because I don't understand but like it sounds like it's going to keep getting more and more deceptive, where it's really going to be hard to tell even for the advanced, programmer or whatever, that it's fake.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where we're at currently. That's come to a head with these large lists of petitions for whether that's like AI ethicists or just notable tech leaders like Elon Musk being one of the ones leading the charge, asking everyone and just pleading, let's just pause research past GPT-4 for 6 months, just so that we can, one, catch our breath, but two, make sure that we have all of the proper checks and balances in place so that people don't abuse this technology in ways that really shouldn't be ethically. And also that it's going to break a lot of things. It's going to cause a lot of disruption to the economy, to not just, national economy, but global economy, because whoever has access to the most highest form of artificial intelligence is going to be able to say, hey, AI, now that you can browse the internet, here's 50 grand, go start a business. And this AI will be able to do whatever it wants because it understands that that's the end goal. And if it has that many financial resources to do that, it's going to come up with some really creative ways that can be achieved. And that's kind of where we're at right now, in this weird limbo that I think is arguably a lot larger than the Industrial Revolution, just because it's so unknown, but it's moving so much faster. So there's a current trajectory for how AI and large language models and all of these other things are supposed to, there's like a regular growth rate that's plotted out. But because of each brand new discovery that we're having day over day, week over week, month over month, that rate is like almost 100x what it generally is and generally should be. And so we're making these new discoveries that we don't even know what to do with, because this tool, this platform, whatever, didn't exist 2 weeks ago. And that's where a lot of the ethical questions are coming into play. And of course, there's people going for power grabs and trying to just...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or everyone's pausing. This is our great time to do our dirty work.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's really as unfortunate as it is, I don't think there's any slowing it. Even if we paused 6 months to a year, that's not going to stop a lot of the people and a lot of the progress that's going to be being made. But if things aren't being published publicly by some of these top vendors, then that would slow. But as soon as it picks up, we're right back where we started.
I was thinking if you were going to sweep the legs out from under this philosophically, because one of the things I noticed back in the day, maybe 10 years ago, they were trying to automate, especially in manufacturing and the more hierarchical companies that have big supply chains. They're trying to automate out all the middle managers. So it's like, why do you need new production control? A machine can do everything. Well, then of course it turns out that the world's not static, it's dynamic. So it's like the inventory as it's reported isn't perfect. Or we can't perfectly predict the human being, which wouldn't that be great if we could make the economy great all the time, but we can't predict human behavior, and we can't predict everything. It's like when you change one variable, it ripples through and has different effects on different variables, which and it gets, it's the butterfly effect. With that, and since AI thinks in zeros and ones, but it can do it really fast, does it work better in a stable environment, or is it becoming more, can it start handling dynamic? Because you still have to give it the parameters, and human beings in general don't even know what all of the parameters are. Just thinking again philosophically here, it's like, I don't know, because it just reminds me of that scenario trying to automate all the middle managers out, and then if you put that at a nation state level, and we just can automate all these other people out and have AI solve our problems and make everybody. Or that's kind of wild. But what do you think on the dynamic static, or am I oversimplifying?
I don't really think that's an oversimplification. I do think that there's a lot of weight and merit to understanding and recognizing that I believe we're already at the state where AI is dynamic enough to where it can adapt. We've already had to update, the Turing test so there's an old test that's like determines if you're actually a human being or not. And of course, when GPT rolls around, like it just aces through all of that, and it can't. So it's like, okay, well, maybe this should be updated. So as we recognize, like, what is our greatest value as the human race, it gets really deep and really philosophical really quickly.
And of course, it's one of the disciplines we don't teach in school anymore. Like, we don't worry about philosophy, which you mentioned multiple times, ethics and philosophy on here. And I'm like, there's never been almost a more important time to understand the role of ethics and philosophy when you're talking AI.
Yeah, completely agree. And because all of these, so artificial intelligence as a whole is based on like neural networks. So all of that means is it's laid out the same way as a human brain. So how it stores information, its adaptability, what it knows, what it doesn't know, what it can learn. And that is the very interesting part of the conversation is I believe that during my lifetime, we will achieve this level, and the terms like super intelligence, which is the day that artificial intelligence surpasses the capability, the adaptability, the understanding of a human. And it could be argued
when the Matrix begins.
Exactly. And it could be argued that that's already taken place, because humans also aren't apples to apples comparison. So if one person is sick or impaired in a certain way, then that is kind of already there. But when it comes to who's like top 10 in the world in this field, and doing this thing, and it's very, very crucial that we understand our humanness. We understand our own faults and our own misguidings sometimes. But at the same time, I think there's so much value and so much benefit in AI that we really just need to take the time to understand it and to approach it in a holistic way that is maintaining our humanity, which is a really weird thing to have to say.
So, all right. So Luke, to close this out, I guess, just what are your general thoughts moving forward? Like, someone listening to this episode might be a little bit, scared, or myself included. And, whenever a macro or a massive change is coming, you can put us on our heels. And I guess, would there be any encouragement you have to offer, or is it all, are we going to all be replaced in years and the machines win? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'll make sure that we end on a positive note here. I'll start by saying that time and time again, people fear what they do not understand. And so this is such a new technology. It's a new way of thinking and interacting with the world around us that I think it's very important that we take the time to understand. That naturally will reduce the amount of fear and anxiety for this newness. But I think it has to be a very healthy balance with how we perceive and really just how we proceed with the future. And the roles that we have right now in all of our current jobs, or how we learn, all of those things will not be the exact same for sure in 5 years. I would also argue that it's much, much sooner than that, depending on what field you're in, because the rate, as we've already discussed, of these advancements is like nothing we've ever seen before. And so I think that as long as we proceed with caution, we have teams and students, or whoever we are teaching, it's all about this adaptability with our growth mindset and how we learn. So if you are hungry to learn and you're adaptable, it's going to be okay. If you are set in your ways and you've done one thing the exact same way for 40, 50 years, that's going to be a lot more jarring for you. But I think it's important for all of us to be patient with each other as well, as all of this new tech is flooding. How do we help people get the most value out of it? Because as with anything, it's a disruption. So it's going to disrupt. It's just a matter of how do we understand it to the best of our ability and navigate it in a loving way, honestly, like just with other people.